So this isn't your typical makeup tutorial video. This is actually a video where I will be sharing something personal that has happened to me over the last 3 or 4 weeks. God has truly placed it heavy on my heart to share my testimony so that in hopes to shed light on really listening to your body, following up when your body tells you that something is wrong, because the decision of waiting it out or looking into it as soon as you're experiencing those symptoms could be a matter of life or death. I went to the doctor on January the 27th, and unbeknownst to me, she walked in the office and she had asked me, what brought me in, and I told her I was seeking for some help in order for my husband and I to try to conceive a baby. We had been trying for about 6 months. And she said, "Well, sweetheart, your pregnancy test came back positive." And I immediately just started crying uncontrollably. It was one of those ugly cries. So I'm so excited. I'm like, well, how am I going to, go home and tell John? It was just such a joyful experience, and I just couldn't have been happier. It just came at the perfect time. It was right when, we both were getting kind of fed up and kind of, frustrated. It was just like, boom, right then and there, we got the news that we have been wanting. So fast forward, that last couple weeks, I had been spotting and, having a little discharge. And I read that, brown discharge and spotting could be normal in pregnancies early on. So I didn't think anything of it. But I did say that if it was going to continue for about another week or so, I would look into it. So I went to work. Actually, on February the 8th, I went to work. And something told me to look into it because I had still had some spotting here and there. It wasn't every day, but it was enough to show some kind of concern. So I called down to our OB triage department, and she did say that she needed me to come in just to be on the safe side. They can give me an ultrasound to kind of check things out to make sure everything is okay. And I went down, and they first said it could be one of two things. If you have like some type of yeast infection, or if you have an infection, you can have discharge with that. She checked, and did just a vaginal scanning, and nothing was there. Everything came back clear. And then she said, well, now let's actually do the ultrasound. I get prepped for that. She inserted the probe inside of me. We're taking a look at my uterus. She's, moving it around. I'm looking, and I can tell I don't see her heartbeat. But I'm not saying anything yet. I'm still being hopeful. I'm just kind of praying silently to myself. And it was such an awkward silence. She didn't want to mention or break the silence or say anything yet. But it was such an awkward silence for me that I finally had to speak up and say, doctor, is it not looking good? And she said no. She said, Corey, I'm not finding a heartbeat. And that moment, it's just almost like my heart just shattered. It just almost like it shattered inside of my chest. And I just wasn't expecting, here it is. I just found out 2 weeks prior that, we had been trying for 6 months, finally got pregnant, and then to hear that there's no heartbeat, it was just like somebody had ripped a hole out of my heart. And I just didn't know what to do. And so she, she was very supportive, and, she asked me, did I want to call my husband? And so I called John and I shared with him the news, and we were both just like in disbelief. Like, we really didn't believe it, but like I told him, like, there was no heartbeat. I mean, I knew what to look for, and I just didn't see it. And so the doctor let me get dressed. She came back in, and she went over the 3 choices that I had as far as getting rid of the contents out of my body. And one choice is just to let your body let it pass on its own. She gave me 2 other options. She said, we can actually take you to the OR, and we'll give you a spinal, which is where, of course, I won't feel, almost like an epidural. You don't feel anything from the waist down. They'll open up my cervix, and then they'll suction out the contents that way. Or she said, we can do it here in the office, and it's going to be a little bit more painful because they can't give me a spinal, but what they can do is they can just give me an IV with morphine. So I decided to come back 2 days later, so February 10th. That Friday I came back in the office. John was there with me. And, I went through the procedure. It was very, very painful in the beginning as far as the injections in my cervix. But once the numbing medicine really kicked in, it was bearable. I was able to tolerate it. So everything went very well. Friday night, I was able to go right home after the procedure. No complications. Friday night was fine. Saturday was fine. And Sunday was fine. So then Monday comes. So here we're at February the 13th on Monday. So I noticed I was having some cramping, but it was very light cramping in the beginning of the day. So it was nothing that was too alarming. So I kind of, overlooked it, kept doing what I need to do to get my errands done for that day. As the day went on and it got into the evening, the cramping became a little bit more intense. And so I was starting to get worried. But then again, I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is just part of, the aftermath or the side effects from the procedure from Friday. But I remember her stating that if I'm going to have any cramping, it's going to be within 24 hours of the procedure. I tried to sleep on it. I said, well, I'm going to just go to sleep because I knew I had to work a 12-hour shift the next day. So I said, well, maybe if I sleep on it, by the time I wake up in the morning, I will feel a lot better. Well, from 12:30 a.m. to 3:30 a.m., I had sharp pains probably every 30-45 minutes. And they were getting more and more intense to where it led me into tears. So I immediately called our 24/7 line, which is convenient. You can talk to a triage nurse. And so I called and I let them know what was going on, that I was experiencing very, very sharp pains. If I was to rate my pain on a scale of 0 to 10, and 10 being the worst pain I've ever experienced, it was about an 8. And she called the on-call doctor, let them know what was going on. They said, you need to come in here as soon as possible. Do not drive yourself, but you need to come to the emergency room. We need to get you checked out. So I called my family. Of course, it was 3:45 in the morning. I finally got in touch with my father, and he rushed over to grab me. My husband wouldn't have been able to be back there with me at the hospital with us having a 1-year-old. So I wanted somebody that can come to the hospital with me, that can actually just stay with me. And so my father was willing to come get me. And I knew John would be up there later after he dropped off our son at the daycare. So my father and I headed to the hospital. They gave me another ultrasound just to make sure they didn't miss anything, or to see if there was anything still left in my uterus. And they noticed it was just a little bit of fluid. And they couldn't tell, of course with ultrasound, you don't know whether it's blood or what it is, but they saw it was a collection of fluid there. But they knew that wasn't the cause of my pain. And it was predominantly on my left side. So anytime I moved, anytime I walked, it would just shoot sharp pains through my side, through my vaginal area. It was just pain that I tell people I just cannot put into words. It was worse than contractions. And so they finally got me into another room to do a more invasive ultrasound so they can take a look at my abdomen, they can take a look at my fallopian tubes, my uterus, everything, to get a full picture of kidneys, to really see what could be going on. And they saw that I had a mass in my left fallopian tube. And they didn't know, from the ultrasound, they couldn't tell what was in my fallopian tube. They said it could be a cyst or it could be an ectopic pregnancy. And I know firsthand about ectopic pregnancies. I've had a close friend of mine that experienced one, and I knew of other people that have. And I know how it can be life-threatening if you don't catch it. Thank God they did the test, and they saw that it was ectopic pregnancy. And they had to rush and put me on the OR schedule that day. They got me in within like 2 or 3 hours before my fallopian tube would rupture. And that's when it can cause internal bleeding, and it could lead to death. So it was just a lot for me to take in, because I thought I had closure on that Friday as far as, the baby, being the contents of the baby being removed out of my body. I thought I had closure, and I was on the road to healing as far as, just losing the baby. And then to have to come back in that Tuesday morning to find out that the baby was still inside of me. It was in my left fallopian tube, and then I had to have emergency surgery where I had to be put under with anesthesia. And then they also informed me that I wouldn't be able to keep my tube. More than likely, they wouldn't be able to save it. So it was just a lot to process. But I thank God that morning I had my brother there, I had my father, and I had my husband there with me the entire morning before I even went to surgery. And when I got out of surgery, I had my twin sister was there, my mother, my grandmother, and my husband. So it's been a lot that I've been having to deal with as far as just losing the baby first and foremost, and then having to go through 2 separate procedures with the baby. One, like I said, which was scary, because if I didn't listen to that voice that told me in the middle of the night to get this checked out, initially I was trying to just weigh it out and see if I feel better in the morning, but I just truly thank God that I listened to that voice. I listened to his voice, and he said, go to the hospital and get this checked out. Because if I wouldn't have listened to that voice and I would have just waited it out, I wouldn't be here to share my testimony today. And I'm sharing this with you. It's very personal with me because, it's just, the fact that I haven't had time to really grieve from my pregnancy, and then turn around having to have surgery, and then just being in pain from the surgery. But God has truly shown me that every step of the way he has been there for me. And God is a God of healing. He is a God of just miraculous works, and I just know that he's going to grant the desires of our hearts. I know he's going to bless our family with another baby. I have no doubt in my mind that he is, and I'm just more thankful that he spared my life. I'm grateful that he allowed me to still be here. I'm grateful that I listened to his voice, and I trusted him every step of the way, even though I was scared. But I just knew that I was in his hands. I knew I was in his hands. I know I am a favorite child of God, and God is just so amazing. He's never let me down, and why would he wait now to do it? And so he has put it heavy on my heart just to share this testimony, because a lot of times, especially in the African American community, we love to put off when we haven't experienced any pains or any medical issues. A lot of times it's based on you just don't want that medical bill, or you just don't want to be in the hospital all night, or you don't feel like it, or you're tired. A small decision to whether to ignore what your body is telling you or actually to act on it is literally a decision of life or death for some people. And, I just want to share this testimony so that people can be more aware of listening to your body. When it's time to check out whatever it is going on with you, do not put it off, because you may not have those 2 or 3 extra days that you think you have to look into a situation. You may not even have that. And so I just want to share this with you, and I pray that this touches the lives of others that may have experienced something similar, especially those that have experienced a miscarriage. I would love to get feedback. I have my good days and my bad days as far as dealing with it. I try to stay busy, but I'm even open to, hearing some of your stories and sharing with me what you have done to get over the grieving process. And I know it's probably a process that you'll never completely get over. You'll probably always think about that child. But to make the days go a little bit easier, if there's any tidbits or any encouraging words or any tips that you want to share with me, I'm so happy to receive it. It's just been amazing the amount of support I have received from the people that did know about my situation. I wasn't able to drive for a while, being on narcotic medications. So I've had people take me to run errands. I've had friends and family drop off food. They sent edible arrangements. They've prayed for me. They've called, checked up on me. They have, came to visit. I just can't thank God enough for my, I call my circle of hope, because love truly does heal. And even though, somebody like me that's very independent, it's hard for me to have people do stuff for me, but it's been a humbling process. God has shown me some things you just can't do on your own, and you need the help of others. So I just want to share this story, share this testimony, and I thank you for taking the time out to listen. God bless you, and thank you for tuning in. Bye.